This is a topic that has questioned my sanity and has been haunting me for years and years. I've been seeing the same man since I was in my late teens. I'm now 38 years old. I started seeing him in random places around the age of 17. I have lived in very heavily populated areas, and I have lived all over the tri-state area. I've seen him in parking lots and I've seen him in stores. I've seen him at events, but the craziest one was that I saw him at a destination wedding in St. Martin about 10 years ago. I approached him at the wedding and asked him if he had been following me for years because I see him all over the place. As you can imagine, the conversation immediately became one of the most awkward ones that I've ever been a part of. He kind of just laughed it off and just shrugged it off, but I could tell that he knew that he'd been seeing me all over the place too. There's been a span of over a year to 2 years where I don't see him whatsoever, and it seems like it comes in waves. My life has changed considerably, as you can imagine, since the age of 17. I now have a wife and a child. My most recent sighting of the guy was in a store called Bye Baby. I was buying things for my newborn. Within that same month, I saw him in a Home Depot, which was about 30 miles away. Every time this happens, he pretends like he doesn't see me, but I can tell that he's as sketched out as I am. The last sighting of this guy was a couple of months ago in a store for baby stuff, and that was a final straw for me. I'm telling you, if I see this guy again, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I don't care what it takes, I have to know. It's something that I've been pondering over and over the years for a long time, and like I said, it's made me question my own sanity. I'm also a male for frame of reference, and the guy that I've been seeing is a lot older than me, but it seems like he hasn't aged a bit, which sounds pretty crazy that he looks the same as he did when I saw him when I was 17. Like I said, I know that the man is real because, as I mentioned before, I've talked to him face to face, but that still doesn't make me question my own sanity. Adding to my personal collection of weird stuff and glitches, I think I met somebody who was supposed to be my best friend. This happened at the mall today, so I'm writing this as fresh as it comes. I was browsing the electronics store when I noticed some guy walking towards me. Usually I'm not so good at recognizing faces in the crowd, but when I saw this guy, I felt like I knew exactly who he was. This is my best friend. Not just a friend, but one of my besties, actually. I know him from somewhere. I could just feel it. So without even thinking, I went up to him to say hi. You know how you get excited when you see somebody who's close to you and that person just appears randomly out of nowhere? That's how both of us felt at that moment. We even frickin' hugged each other at the start, like we knew each other for a long time and were good friends. "What's up, mate? Skipping work, huh?" he said. "Decided to have a day for myself, and I'm just feeling so lazy lately. How's your girlfriend? How is she?" "Oh, she's the same. She's doing great. Everything's fine." We talked for a good bit about some stuff in the store, laughed like idiots, and joked around a bit, and then decided to part ways. The sudden realization hit me when I got out of the store. I don't know this guy. It's not that I can't remember him. I actually don't have the slightest clue as to what this guy's actual name is, much less anything about his frickin' girlfriend. So why did I just ask him how she was doing, and how the hell did he know that I was skipping work? I was so confused. I went down to the first floor and saw him passing again. We politely smiled at each other, but this time I saw him looking as confused as I was. So here I am, still thinking about what happened there. Was it just pure chance that two complete strangers would pretend to be best friends for only 3 minutes? Was it just a glitch that made us friends for a short while and then reversed it? Or were we just two socially awkward idiots with memory issues? I wonder if anybody else has had anything like this ever happen to them before. I don't know if this would be considered paranormal, but for context, I'm deaf, but I have a cochlear implant that helps me hear normally. This happened almost like 10 years ago, but it just never left my mind when it did happen. So I would take off my cochlear implant at night when I would go to sleep, and because of that I was not able to hear anything at all. No sound. Just silent and my thoughts. One night I was having trouble sleeping, but I was kind of in a sleep-like state. but I was still somewhat awake. I was probably in stage 2 sleep, and out of nowhere I could hear a voice, and it's almost like I knew who this voice was or where it was coming from, and it said to me, "I love you," and my name. It's hard to explain it, but it was like hearing something with my cochlear implants already on. However, it wasn't on. I had taken it off to go to sleep. But I still heard it, and it wasn't in my head. It was my grandma who passed away months ago when this event took place. But I had a hard time believing what I was hearing. This didn't make any sense to me at all. It couldn't. I was only around 12 or 13 years old at that time, but I know what I experienced. As the title says, I overheard a conversation about an incident at work that didn't happen for another week. I was working in a large warehouse that has an office on one side for administration and management. I was in the office passing the GM when I heard him talking to somebody on the speakerphone about a certain employee yelling at somebody and causing a ruckus. I decided to ask somebody in that particular department what had happened, and they just looked at me confused, saying nothing like that ever happened. A week later, the exact incident I heard described over the phone happened, and it happened with the exact same employee that was involved. I desperately tried to remember what the GM was wearing during that phone call when I saw him talking. I felt like I stepped into the future for a brief moment, but it would have only been within the 30-foot hallway. I was in a neighboring office for only a minute when I exited the warehouse. The person I asked about the incident a week prior is a little bit freaked out too, as they remember me asking, and now he knows why. I'm not sure if this is the right subreddit, but either way, I must confess, I'm extremely unorganized, and I don't have a pencil case for school. I have one 4-color Bic pen. The black part of this pen is missing because I used it all, and then took out the spring to mess around with the battery during physics class. I reached into my left pocket, and where I kept my pen and my glasses, I pulled out the pen. I put it on the desk and reached back into my pocket to get my glasses. I pulled out my glasses, and at the same time, I pulled out another 4-color Bic pen, and the second pen that I pulled out was also missing the black portion. As arbitrary as this might seem, it confused the hell out of me, and I spent the entire economics class looking at these two pens. They both have a groove in the same spot on the blue plastic part of the pen, like I've used them the exact same amount of time doing the exact same stuff. But I know that's impossible because I only had one of these pens, so where did the second one come from? This happened February, earlier this year. I doubt that I'll ever get over it. I just turned 18, and I live in the suburbs that I grew up in. My best friend and I hang out almost every night, as we live in the same neighborhood, and we like to drive around my car. We'd often drive around the houses in the neighborhood adjacent to us, and I love to drive, so we do it often. However, for the first time, something felt off about our unusual wandering route. My best friend lives at the top of the hill, and I live at the bottom of it. It was around 11:30 on a Friday night, and we were driving around near her house, and we were about to turn into the intersection we always took, when suddenly I felt something drop in my gut. For whatever reason, I was overwhelmed with the urge to not take the intersection under any circumstance. I vocalized this to my best friend, asking, "Does this place feel eerie to you at all, for some reason?" and stating, "I feel uneasy. We should turn around." She didn't feel the same though, but she felt alright with turning around and going elsewhere if I didn't want to go that direction. I've never been a reluctant person, and I've never really cared about where we drove, as our neighborhood is relatively safe, and I know it like the back of my hand. I don't have anxiety, and I'm always confident in my actions. I've lived in this neighborhood my entire life, and I've probably been around the intersection 1,000 times. Never in my life have I felt so wrong about anything. It's like something took over my body and mind, putting me in a state of paralyzed fear. I could hear a voice in my head screaming, "Don't drive there. Don't do it." I felt a sense of impending dread that I couldn't explain, one that I'd never felt before in my life. There was absolutely no immediate threat, the intersection looked completely normal, exactly like it had for the past 17 years that I've lived there. I've never understood what put my body in such an utter state of panic. That feeling sat with me throughout the night. We drove to the main street of our town, where we were stopped by a red light. There's virtually no crime here, and it's very common for our suburb to have teenagers driving around at this time. So when I saw a police car coming, I figured it was because some kid was probably doing something that he wasn't supposed to be doing. I angled my car out of their way, as I usually do. However, there was more than one cop car coming, and they didn't stop coming. One came speeding, and then 4, and then I became worried. We counted 9 cars in total, including an ambulance. They were driving in the direction of our neighborhood. That familiar feeling of dread flooded my senses, and I turned to my best friend and told her that we were going to go home. I spent the night at her house, and she was seemingly unfazed by the entire situation. After all, it wasn't that uncomfortable for police to be out at night, and, like I previously stated, it was ample time for teenagers like us to be out doing dumb stuff. I still found it strange that there were so many emergency vehicles coming at once, but I just shrugged it off as nothing and tried to enjoy the rest of my night. The next morning, my best friend and I went to get breakfast. We were sitting in my car eating when suddenly her face dropped mid-sentence. She was looking at her phone while she ate, and I questioned what she had seen that was so surprising. She looked at me and said, "Last night, a kid died." I didn't put the pieces together until she told me the details of the incident. The previous night, a teenager in our grade had been joyriding with his friends and lost control of his vehicle. The entire car was split in 2 by a tree, and this poor kid, he died on impact. I was shocked. People didn't get into fatal accidents here very often, especially not young kids, people my age. My heart ached for his family, and I felt despair that he was so young. But my shock grew into sheer horror when she told me the circumstances. He died at approximately 11:34 p.m. on a Friday night, a mere block away from the street that I felt the urge to avoid at all costs. I checked my Google timeline in an effort to disprove what I was thinking. My heart dropped when I read the timestamp from the previous night of our location near the intersection. 11:33. My best friend and I shared a wordless glance, and I just lost my appetite at that moment. I still can't explain how I felt a force stronger than anything than I've ever felt ever before in my life at that exact time that kid died. In the exact place he died, no less. If we had taken that intersection, we would have seen his car crash into that tree. Hell, we could have been caught up right in the middle of it, and all 3 of us, that kid included, would have wound up losing our lives that night. This is really weird, and I feel like I'm losing my mind. My boyfriend is out of town for the week, so I'm on my own in our apartment. After the first couple of days of him being gone, I'm out for groceries. So this morning I decided to hit the grocery store on my way home from work. Before I left work, I went through the fridge, freezer, and pantry and made a list of things that I needed. Then I went to work. I stopped at the grocery store right after leaving work, and then I went home. As I put my groceries away, I noticed that they were already put away. Like, I bought 2 onions, and as I put them away, there were already 2 onions there where I put the onions. And when I went to go put my fake chicken strips in the freezer, there was already a box there waiting in its place. Like somebody had gone to the store, bought a box of fake chicken strips and put them there before I got home. I put my oat milk in the fridge, and there was already an identical oat milk container waiting in its place. Nearly every item that I had bought had a double of itself already waiting in its place, either in the pantry or in the fridge or in the freezer or somewhere, with the exception of a lime and a jalapeno. I am so confused about this. I only put these on my list this morning because I was out and I needed to get some more. Now I have 2 of everything and a major headache from trying to figure out just how this happened. I know that it wasn't my boyfriend, and I can't imagine a scenario in which it would have been me in any way. After all, that's why I checked the pantry, the fridge, and the freezer this morning, because we were out of stuff. Part of me is like, hey, that's pretty cool, I have free groceries. But another part of me is like, how in the heck did all of this stuff duplicate on its own? Or who brought it in? I wonder if anybody has any ideas or similar stories to this. I'm kind of freaked out and don't want to touch all the duplicate food because, honestly, I don't know where it came from. When I first started my job, I got into a conversation with a lady in the office next door to mine. She told me that at lunch she liked to close her office door because she had celiac disease and certain foods gave her terrible indigestion. She seemed embarrassed by it, but I understood. Often I would hear her spraying Lysol in her office before opening the door again. Most recently, I developed severe allergies. I didn't know I had them and ate some shrimp on my birthday. Once at home, I went into anaphylaxis, though at the time I didn't know that's what was happening to me. I had an NDE and fell out of my body and floated around several times. I fought my way through it and eventually recovered. Later on, I discovered I also had developed a gluten intolerance. I recalled that gluten intolerance was similar to celiac, so one day I decided to ask my coworker if her celiac had started out as gluten intolerance, and also what other symptoms she had with her celiac. When I asked her, she looked at me very strangely and said she didn't have celiac disease at all. I reminded her of the conversation that we had had before, but she didn't remember it. She said once that she thought she might have had celiac, but a trip to her doctor confirmed that she didn't. I was stunned and could only assume that she was lying, but I couldn't figure out why she would lie about something like that. Listening to these glitch videos online on YouTube, I learned that NDEs are often connected with the glitch experiences. It suddenly dawned on me that it had been a very long time since my coworker had closed her office door for lunch. She also didn't spray Lysol in her office like she used to. It seemed that all these things had changed after my near-death experience. When I came out of my body, did my old timeline leave me behind? When I panicked and jumped back into my body, did I also jump into a new timeline or a new dimension? Maybe my coworker wasn't lying. Maybe this new version of her didn't have celiac after all.